could take a break from this world. Running on a hamster wheel, but searching for something I can't feel. I just wanna be a lost girl and fly. Take a breath, feel my wings spread, levitate above the ground and make eye contact with clouds. Now I'm rising, I'm soaring above it all. I just wanna be free, finally, I wanna be free, finally, I wanna be free, finally, I wanna be free, finally. I always say dreaming, never imagine I lose my spark. Living in this crazy time, putting back the pieces of my mind. I know how to run from the dark and fly. Feel my wings spread, levitate into the clouds. I'm so high above the ground. I'm rising, I'm soaring above it all. I just wanna be free, finally, I wanna be free.
Race, conversations, and law enforcement. This is Moses' People Speak. Welcome everyone to another episode of Moses People Speak. I'm your host, Terry Watson, the founder of Strategies for Justice. Today, I am very excited to have with us our guest, and I do want to bring them on. But before we get started, I want to make one quick announcement. For those who've been attending our episodes know that we have been discussing mental health and law enforcement for quite a while now. So the one thing I'm happy to announce is that we do have our save the date for our symposium in April. So by all means, April 7th through April 9th, we will be having our annual symposium. The topic is going to be breaking the stigma, mental health, and policing. So that's the only announcement today that I want to make because I do want to get into our discussion today. So the previous episode that we had with Jeanette Hall, we talked about four ladies out of Baltimore who was filing a lawsuit with the Baltimore Police Department. And in that conversation, one of the things we did mention was the impact that we are seeing by these lawsuits coming about. Again, the one in DC and then the one in Baltimore. So with that, I want to bring on our guests, and I want them to introduce each one of them individually as we speak to them. And so with that said, let's get into it. Let me invite my guests who are now backstage. Welcome all to Moses People Speak. I'm so happy to have you guys on board. All right, let me make sure we get everyone unmuted because that's going to be important. There we go. All right, can you guys all hear? Excellent. So let's start off with this one because I want to make sure people have a chance to know who you guys are. And before we dive into the conversation, so can you just introduce yourself one by one? Danika, we can start with you because you're right up top.
Hello, my name is Sergeant Danika Yampierre. I've been with the Baltimore City Police Department, started my 16th year in August. I've been there since 2006. I've been dealing with racism, discrimination, and I'm here today to expose everything and talk about the issues within the Baltimore City Police Department that needs to stop.
Thank you, and welcome to the show. Let's hop over to you, Welai. Yeah, you're next over there. So, Welai, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sergeant Welai Grant. I've been with Baltimore City Police Department for 14 years. My incident occurred in 2019 where I blew the whistle on a white commander for calling an applicant the N word. I'm here to speak about the impact that it had on me based on the discrimination I've encountered. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Uh, Jasmine, you're next on this panel as well.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Jasmin Rowlett. I have been with the Baltimore City Police Department since 2009. I have been subjected to sexual harassment, I guess racial disparity, and a host of other things, retaliation, and some more. And I'm just here to tell my story.
Thank you for being here. And last but not least, the attorney. And I'm glad to have you on board too, because usually when I'm speaking with guests in law enforcement, there's always this legality piece that comes up that we typically can't address. So I'm so happy to have you on here, Ms. Lewis. But please introduce yourself as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, as well as my clients who are commonly now being referred to as the Baltimore Four. My name is Deanna Maria Lewis. I'm the managing attorney and founder of the District Legal Group. We are a small boutique litigation firm based in DC. However, we also litigate clearly in the state of Maryland, and we do federal EEO work nationally. Very happy to be here, and let's get started.
Absolutely. Well, funny enough is, I want to propose a question to each one of you, actually, and I want to put you guys in the spotlight to answer that question. And honestly, too, when we advertise this episode, a lot of folks who RSVP ask the same exact question. So I'll definitely want to get started with that first question, which is, can you sort of explain your law enforcement experience and how it led you to filing this lawsuit? And now, anyone, you can start at any time.
Well, I'll start off. As I've said earlier, blew the whistle on a white commander who said something egregious to an African American applicant. I filed the complaint. I did everything that I was supposed to do as a supervisor. I was tormented for doing that. I was threatened in so many ways for doing that. And it came from the top, it came from the police commissioner. I spoke publicly of a conversation that I had with him in which he told me that I was placing myself in a coffin. And the fact that he said that, and I'm expressing to him of I was afraid of retaliation. I knew that it was coming. And in that moment, the leader set the tone. All right. Because it started from him. And everywhere that I went, I was retaliated against. I was skipped for promotion, no valid reason. And just to sum it up, that's what I've gone through. And it really hasn't been a good experience for me. It really doesn't feel good at all. And it makes you second guess the decisions that you've made to see if it was a good idea to even speak up about this.
Hmm. How about let's start with you, Danika. Same question. What led to this lawsuit?
Okay. Mine started in 2019 as well. I was working for a white lieutenant commander as well. He wanted me to do things that was totally unethical, such as like making up overtime, giving people overtime. One incident, he had this one guy, Caucasian guy, white guy. He killed a black man, and he'd been suspended from the police department for like 20 something years. And with that being said, when you're suspended, you're not supposed to work overtime. During the course of the time, I was pregnant, and I was allowed accommodations to go to my doctor's appointments and because I had a high risk pregnancy. But because of the fact that I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do, such as, signing overtime slips, falsifying overtime, he took those accommodations back from me, as well as sexual harassment. This guy asked me and another female sergeant out plenty of times on a date. And of course, I denied them, rejected them. So it was more so like, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then I'm gonna take everything back that I supposed to been helping you for, especially with my pregnancy. And it's been like downhill. It's been hell from there. Um, Subjected to transfers. They tried to force me out of my position. They took my parking spot from me. It's been really, really bad. Like nonstop frivolous complaints. After I filed my complaint in reference to the egregious things that he was doing to me and how I was going up the chain of command and going to my director, letting them know what was going on. Everybody turned the blind eye. Nobody wanted to help me. Nobody wanted to do anything. However, they made me as the victim into the villain. So they was trying to make up any and everything that they can do to try to get rid of me because I was blowing the whistle on what they were doing down in the unit. That was totally unethical and against policy, and I wasn't going for it. So, with that being said, they started doing all these complaints. They got me um, out of the unit that I've been there for 8 years. This lieutenant only been there for 3 months, and he was able to conjure up some lies, some bogus things to get me out. It's been really, really stressful, especially dealing with my pregnancy. They were stressing me out while I was on maternity leave, up until my due date, actually, and prior to me giving birth. They were stressing me out, calling me, when are you coming in? Because we need to charge you again with this. You was coming in late while you was pregnant, and so forth. Make a long story short, I actually delivered my baby on the sidewalk because I was so stressed out, and because of all the stress that I was going through. The baby came so fast, and the baby was under a lot of stress. So that like sums it up. And till this day, I'm still going through it. It's what, 2021, and nobody. I filed complaints internally. I went through each step. I went to the director over top of the lieutenant, to the deputy commissioner, to the chief of staff, basically to the commissioner. I even went to city hall. So I did all of these steps prior to me even following my external federal EEOC complaint in January 2020. So it was not like that. I never reached out internally for help. I did, and they all turned the blind eye. So it's really hard because you can't trust anybody internally to help you. So there's no help inside. So I'm still suffering from it, and as of right now, I'm pregnant and I'm still dealing with a lot of stress. I just passed out yesterday while I was working, so I'm like literally just getting out the hospital late last night. Um, with stress,
Wow.
sick. So that's where I'm at.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I know you and I have spoken to before too. So yeah, wow. Uh, Jasmine, same question to you. What led you
Okay.
to this? Yeah.
Yes. So a lesson of mine was there was a white male supervisor on my shift who was sexually harassing me. He would ask me questions like, "Hey, I never been with a black girl before. Can you be my first black girl?" Um, Inappropriate things like that. He would ask me to wear his clothes all day, so that way he can go home smelling like me. And he would say how I smelled so yummy, things like that. I declined his, request multiple times. He would FaceTime me at ridiculous hours of the morning. I would say like 2 o'clock in the morning. He would call me FaceTime, and if I didn't pick up the phone the next day at work, he would make it hell for me. He would be coming in there yelling at me, cursing me out in front of the officers, asking why didn't I pick up the phone for him. Um, he just made my workplace very uncomfortable for me. I reported it to my major, and things went downhill for me because I guess I didn't know, but he was one of her favorites. Um, I began to come to work, and I was pregnant. I revealed my pregnancy later on because I know how the department is towards pregnant women, so I didn't tell them up front until I began to show. When I told them, I was coming into work and I had toy rats on my desk. I had, I was being called a snitch. I just was being called all these bogus names because I reported him. Um, it was just so traumatizing for me. I then I had a high risk pregnancy such as Danika, and I had a doctor's note from my doctor saying that I couldn't work over a certain amount of hours. I gave that to my major, and she gave me an accommodation originally. But once things got really hot and heated between me and this other supervisor, my accommodation was taken away. I had no idea why. I requested a meeting to speak with her. She wouldn't talk to me. She shooed me away. I did everything I could to try to figure out why couldn't I get this accommodation. She told me I had to um, work rotating shifts, which that's against the policy. She told me that because this was during the prime of COVID, she told me that I would have to like stand on foot with the rest of the shift and you know do roll call outside, do all the administrative paperwork, just all of the things that was like really against what my doctor's note, stated for me to do. So I called out medical. I was out for a couple of days, and then I got a text message from that sergeant, the same sergeant who had been harassing me, sexually harassing me. He texted me and said, "Hey, I need you to come in and clear your desk off." I'm like, "What?" So he was like, "Yeah, come clear your desk." I said, "Well, who told you to tell me to clear my desk off?" He was like, "Oh, this is orders from 400, which was the major at the time." So I'm like, "She's giving you orders to clear my desk." And I said, "Well, who's taking my desk?" And he was like, "Me." So I'm like, you do all of this stuff to me, take away my accommodation, and then you give my desk, a pregnant woman's desk, to the guy who was sexually harassing her. So I couldn't come to work. So I was forced to kind of like go out on unpaid leave. And while I was out on unpaid leave, I ended up having a baby early, prematurely. She has complications now, so I'm dealing with that. They charged me with AWOL while I was out on maternity leave. It was just so much. It was so much, and I'm still dealing with it. They just don't stop. They haven't stopped. Even since we've come out with all of this, they haven't stopped. They're coming full throttle. So I just got fed up. I had to do something. I had to protect me, because I was out here on this island by myself, and they were just coming at me out of the blue, from reporting this one white man.
Wow.
Terry, Terry, I wanted to also chime in because you were asking essentially how they got here, right?
Right.
And I think what you're hearing from their stories is they got here because they were being treated like crap in their workplace, right? For various reasons, whether it was because they were being subjected to differential treatment, disparate treatment, whether they were trying to be forced as Black women to engage in what they believe to be unethical workplace practices, and they reported it. I think there's a common thread here that each of these women reported internally the various workplace issues and hostilities that they were being subjected to. And as a result, there was no reprieve. There was no one there who answered their call for help. No one really seemed to care at all. And quite frankly, they seemed invisible. And so the reason they got to the point of filing these federal lawsuits is because no one listened. They tried time and time again to get help internally. They followed their own internal protocols. They reported and filed multiple 95s after 95s, and nothing happened. Nothing changed. So even after going through the federal EEOC, they were really left with no recourse but to continue advocating for themselves and standing up for themselves. And that's how we got here today.
My next question is actually directed towards you too, because you have been down this road before with dealing with policing and discrimination complaints. And one thing that always comes to my mind, and I think we're going to reflect on this too as well, is the discrimination in regards to being AWOL, using AWOL as a tactic, or providing a workplace accommodation and then taking it back. So I don't know how much you can share, but legally, what problems have you seen in regards to those particular providing accommodation and taking it back? Is that something that you've seen across your field of work?
So it's not one specific thing, right? When you're assessing a legal claim, when you're talking about retaliation, there has to be a consideration of proximity of time, right? So you have to engage in what's considered statutorily protected activity, EEO activity, specifically to be covered under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then the idea is that close in time, there's some proximity in time to you engaging in that protected activity and you having some sort of adverse subsequent action happen to you, right? There's this kind of there are these prima facie elements that have to be contemplated and assessed. But the basic idea is that you have reported. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything formal. You don't necessarily have to use any magic words, but you complain or you report discrimination or what you believe to be unfair and illegal practices. And subsequent to doing so, you're then targeted, and then you are the recipient of adverse actions. Adverse actions don't just include or entail providing and then removing a reasonable accommodation. It's disciplinary action. It's demotion. It's non-selection of position. It's removal of duties. It's suspension. It's being placed on paid without leave status. It's harassment that is tantamount to what's called a hostile work environment. So really the consideration is, how are the terms and conditions of your workplace impacted or negatively and adversely affected? So that's really kind of what you see and what you look for legally as a lawyer when you're assessing these cases. Is there proximity of time, and did something actually happen? There are a lot of people who do engage, quite frankly, in statutory protected activity. But from some of the consultations I do, they're just shy of actually having, or what I would consider having, a retaliatory action, right? Some sort of adverse action, or an adverse action that the court has historically, based on legal precedents, determined to be an adverse action, right? So sometimes your work environment is starting to be hostile, but it hasn't quite risen to the level. If you don't have one of those kind of specific delineated adverse actions, and you're really just kind of dealing with petty slights, annoyances, scrutiny in the workplace, scrutiny of your time and attendance and things like that, over time and over a period of time, those things become what's called tantamount to a hostile work environment, or tantamount to harassment, which then in and of itself can be considered a hostile work environment, which could be considered an adverse action depending on the facts. But really what you do look for are kind of very specific things like the list I just went over. And that's not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the most blatant ones. So yes, when I'm doing these Title VII litigation cases, I'm looking for these very specific actions to have occurred. It doesn't mean, that you don't have, a crappy workplace, right? But what I'm looking for is it a legally actionable or legally viable claim?
Gotcha. Now, in this, each one of your situations, I think it was very clear that you follow the process and the protocol as far as follow an internal review, and even after that, it seemed like they're still having that retaliation. So my other question then comes, and again, this is for anyone to answer, is after you file your complaint, what were you hoping your department to do, and not just being the general stuff like follow their own policy or protocol, but what were you looking for your department specifically to do? And I'll do that question to anyone.
I can go first. That sounds like a trick question. What I was hoping for no, because it's like, well, in reality, or in a wishful world, we were expecting help, right? Mm-hmm. But in our minds, we already knew we wasn't going to get help. So we already knew that they was going to turn the heat up when we filed the complaint. So you would think that we would be wishful thinking or in hopes of getting some type of resolution for us filing our complaint. We thought that we would get the help that we were looking for filing our complaint. But in all actuality, we didn't get that. We got the total opposite. We got the retaliation. We got the transfers. We got not getting promoted. So they actually did exactly what we thought that they was going to do, which means not help us at all. So we didn't think that, we honestly didn't think they would help us at all. No, that never crossed my mind. I mean, in a wishful world, yeah, that's what we hope, but we knew that soon when you file that complaint, you are the target. You are the bullseye. So it's like a target on your back, and you are the black sheep in the department. So
Absolutely.
we already knew that that was going to happen.
I see, Jasmine, you're nodding your head in agreement. Yes.
Absolutely. I think with me initially, I just wanted help. I wanted to be moved. I'm like, just get me out of here. That's all I wanted. Just get me out of here. These guys, they're calling me a snitch. They're putting rats on my desk. Get me out of here. Just, that's all I wanted. Just move me. I've written, I can't even tell you how many emails I sent to HR, to EEOC, to internal affairs, just begging for them to move me. And the title of it is Hostile Work Environment. Begging to just be moved. And each time I was just ignored. They didn't even say, we're investigating it or anything. It was just like nothing, silence, dead silence, So it's like, it's so frustrating because you see white women who report similar incidents for them where they've been sexually harassed, and they're gone. They're transferred. Wherever they want to go, they get that transfer. But then it's us, black women, and they don't even care to entertain it. There's nothing from them. And it's like, it's so frustrating because it's like, why can't we get the same help they get? And you don't know who to trust. You sit there and you have people who smile in your face and say, I'm going to help you. This is not right. But here I am. I've been complaining since 2019, 2020. Now here we are, 2021, and I'm complaining again. And I'm still stuck. Nobody's helping me. We're all on this island, secluded by ourselves, no help.
So for me to answer the question, I was aware of the culture within the police department, and I knew that there would be a chance that I would be retaliated against. But at that time, we had a new commissioner. So when I had that meeting with the commissioner, I thought that he would do the right thing. And I thought that I had a way out. I had some type of protection. But shortly after that meeting, I saw that I didn't have any protection. And I was expecting accountability in reference to what that commander said to that applicant, just his behavior towards African Americans. I thought it would be addressed, that he would be held accountable. But it turns out that if it kind of reversed on me. Okay, they made me the culprit. They made me the accused. And it's just repetitive. And I'm sorry to say that when it comes to retaliation, it's no more a black or white thing. Everyone is complicit in retaliating, making you feel uncomfortable. Everyone is responsible. So the whole black or white thing, it goes out the window. And what goes up is that blue wall of silence. That's what's important. Okay, and that's what they hold their loyalty to, is to the badge. It's not to a person, it's not to a race, it's the badge. And I've experienced it firsthand. I don't regret anything that I did because it's made me stronger. If I ever have a battle like this in the police department, I'll know how to fight it because I'll be experienced going through this situation. I've learned a lot, so I don't take it back.
You sort of hit the nail on the head on a couple of points, actually, and I just wanted to dive into those too. And just sort of go back to, I believe, Jasmine, you might have mentioned this. And that's the black female police officer, right? Being treated differently than either their male counterparts or the white female counterparts. And can we dive into that conversation too? Because there was one question that was submitted in our, in our pre-questions that talked about that, was what advice would you give to black women who are trying to enter law enforcement, being what you've gone through? And I'm also going to pose that question to you, Ms. Lewis, as well, since you've dealt with this case and other cases similar.
So I'll start it off if you don't mind.
Mhm.
I would definitely tell them, number one, be true to yourself. Always know who you are and always stand firm on your values and your morals and beliefs. Um, I would, being a female in the police department, it's hard. And especially if you're an attractive female, you have it hard. That's just the reality of it. I'm not being shallow, none of it. You have it hard from both men and women. All right. You become a target. So I would recommend that it's not the job at the end of the day, it's the people. All right. And I would tell them to just be aware and just be true to their self, because I've seen a lot of people join the police department and they've joined and they're green and they encounter these things and then they become, these things that they encountered from other people. They become the monster. They came in green, they were innocent, and they go through the department, and because they were treated this way or other people treated it, somehow they've learned or became accustomed to this type of behavior and they began treating other people this way. So I would tell them, definitely don't lose yourself and be true to who you are.
I would say to guard your integrity as your life depends upon it, because once your integrity is gone, then you have nothing. So in this police department, they want you to basically ruin your integrity pretty much, because they want you to be silent, not speak up against wrongdoing. They want to turn different situations a different way, the way how they want it to go. Basically means coerce you into things of what to say and what not to say. So integrity goes a long way, because once, just like what I say, you have to stay true to yourself. And once you stay true to yourself, you guard your integrity and you be strong about it. You have to be strong. You really do. You have to have your integrity and have the courage, because you're going to see some things and things are going to happen. You have to be able to stand up and speak upon it and not be afraid, because the people who are afraid are the ones who are being silent in reference to all these things that are happening. And that's why it's not being stopped. Like I said before, I call ourselves the 10 percenters, because we are the 10% that are actually standing up and going against the department. You have that 90% that are so scared. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people have called us, text us, oh, don't do that. This is going to happen to y'all. Y'all going to lose your job. You shouldn't have said anything. You should have turned the other cheek. So you have to be true to yourself. Just like what I said, you have to be true to yourself and you have to guard your integrity. You really do, because your integrity is all you have in this department. All you have. And once that is gone, you have nothing. You have nothing.
Mm,
So for
that is
me,
powerful.
I would say you gotta have thick skin, because you're gonna get it from every angle, and it's not 100% of us. You have those few because they take it. Those few that take it, they go and they get through their career without any issues because they lie down and they take it. But when you have women, strong women such as us, who fight them back, oh, they come at you. So you have to have thick skin. You have to be able to withstand the things that they throw at you, the lies and the bogus charges, and you know just the whole humiliation of everything, how they try to destroy your character and your name and everything like that. You just have to have thick skin for all of this, to handle it, to maintain it, to get through it, because it's exhausting mentally.
Mm,
um and you know, I think we've all had some type of therapy because of it. It's
Mhm.
traumatizing, and I didn't go in like this. When I entered the department in 2009, I didn't have these issues, as far as like my mental health, but the stuff that they have done to me over the years have almost driven me insane. So you have to be mentally sound and you're going to need therapy. I can't see how else I get through it. So that's my advice to them.
And you also have to be willing to fight. You can't allow them to do whatever they want to do. You have
Absolutely.
to be willing to fight. Like you have to fight. Like because if you don't fight and you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else will. You don't have we don't have no recourse of action. We don't have anybody here who's willing to fight for us, knowing that it is wrong, and they see that it's wrong. Like I said, black, white, indifferent, it doesn't matter. They look, they see, they watch it, and they all be in on it. Like well, I said there's no it's no race when it comes to retaliation. So it's like us against the world, you against the police department. That's basically how it is. They come for you every which way. So you have to be willing to fight for yourself and fight for what is right. Because if you don't, they're going to walk all over top of you. They're going to do whatever they want to do to you. And then you're left with nothing. And then you're either forced out, suspended, or you have nothing. Like they shred you to pieces, and it's no putting you back together.
And another thing is, I will also tell females that are looking to join, do not lose your femininity.
Mm-hmm.
This job diminishes your femininity. Especially with my police department, they will put policies in place where uh, you can't wear nail polish. You have to wear your hair a certain way. And it takes away from our femininity. Women express themselves in ways where, with their hair, with their nails, just exuding our femininity. And this job can take that away from you. The way you're treated can diminish your femininity. Okay. It will make you, act a certain way that you usually wouldn't act. It will make you speak in a certain way that
Mm-hmm.
you usually wouldn't speak in terms of cursing, just things like that. So I would also tell them to always maintain your femininity.
Hmm. And I really want to get your perspective on this too, Ms. Lewis, as well. Because as you are dealing with clients who are being attacked, who are being retaliated against, who are being forced to take different actions, not because of their work, but because of the retaliation that they're experiencing. What advice would you pass along?
So first, let me say that the unfortunate reality is these women's stories with the Baltimore Police Department are not in isolation. These are issues that women in general and Black women in particular are experiencing nationally as a part of law enforcement departments. And so, because of that, women have to go into these positions understanding the possibilities, right? It's not to say that you need to be a Debbie Downer or you need to be negative going into these certain roles or industries, but the reality is you have to go in eyes wide open because these type of industries like law enforcement are heavily male dominated and they're heavily white male dominated. And if you are going to expose yourself, and I mean, as an employment lawyer generally and a civil rights litigator, it's not just law enforcement where women are still experiencing sexism and racism, and Black women in particular have kind of these hybrid claims of sexism and racism. It's not just exclusive to law enforcement. These are issues that, because of the fabric of sexism in our country, the fabric of sexism that this country was built upon, where women historically are meant to be seen and not heard, there's still that cultural bias against women that permeates many industries, particularly when you have industries that are heavily male dominated. And specifically, when you have industries or jobs where there are, kind of these good old boy clubs, right? We
Mm.
sometimes see it not just in law enforcement, but also in politics, right? You see these good old boy clubs, and as long as you go along to get along as a woman, oftentimes, and as a Black woman in particular, sometimes you can keep your head down and you can push through it. You may unfortunately be exposed to uncomfortable and offensive comments, inappropriate conduct and behaviors. But if you keep pushing through it, right, sometimes you'll continue to ascend, right, through your position, or at the very least, you'll keep your job, and be able to support your family and have a livelihood. So, what I would say, in addition to the various wise words that these women have already shared, is make sure you understand whatever job it is, in whatever industry it is that you're about to enter into, right? A lot of people come to me after the fact, like things have been happening to them for years. And sometimes I'm like, so why didn't you seek counsel sooner? Why didn't you, you know, ask someone about this sooner? Why didn't you try to find a lawyer sooner? And the reality is, not everyone, and I think this is a good thing, right? We don't want everyone just thinking that they're being discriminated against, right? Because that kind of undermines the system that we have in place to protect legitimate claims. But the reality is, a lot of people aren't mindful enough that the treatment that they're experiencing in the workplace is inappropriate. And oftentimes that inappropriateness leads to unlawfulness or unlawful behaviors and activities. And so there are plenty of people who are unfortunately subjected to various behaviors, conduct, situations, and scenarios, and they don't immediately think, it does not resonate with them that this may be illegal activity that I'm experiencing, right? Or sometimes they just want to say, oh, maybe this was just a one-off or isolated occurrence, until it starts happening over and over and over again. And you start seeing people who are performing worse than you are being promoted faster than you are, or being provided greater leadership opportunities or promotional opportunities or getting bonuses, right? And you did all the work. And you're sitting there looking like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? But sometimes, unfortunately, that wait a minute, that light bulb just clicks a little too late for some people, and their claims get old. So what I would recommend is, when you start seeing, I would say over a couple months of time, that things just aren't quite right, because discrimination, there's not necessarily, unless you're like being in a workplace where you're called the N-word every day, right? These days, claims of discrimination let me say it this way, there aren't a ton of intentional discrimination claims anymore. Right? I think Sergeant Grant had a very interesting experience where she blatantly heard a superior call an applicant the N-word, which is a racial epithet, right? Racists these days are starting to get a little bit smarter in the workplace. Some of them are still dumb, but some of them are starting to get a little bit smarter, and they will be a little bit more discreet, right? Or they'll say things that's a little bit more suggestive and not be quite as direct. So a lot of Title VII claims, discrimination claims, are litigated based on circumstantial evidence of discrimination. You don't have as many, if this was like 50 years ago, you don't have quite as many, intentional discrimination claims anymore, where you really do have these jarring incidents of, direct, blatant comments to support actions that are being taken against someone because of a protected basis that they have, such as their race or their sex and gender, for example, or their religion or a disability or their age. So what I would say is, when you start noticing that things just don't seem right, start writing them down. Start creating a chronology of events, because I assure you, as you start looking at this timeline or this chronology of events where things just aren't really seeming quite right, you'll start observing a pattern, what we would call a pattern in practice of various behaviors or conduct. And so when you then go to talk to someone about it or to report it, you now have a series of timeframes, a series of incidents that you can refer and relate back to, that to you are indicative of the fact that you're being treated differently for some reason. Oftentimes, if you pay attention to the people who you feel are being treated differently from you, there's something blatant and glaring about you versus them. right? A lot of these women, their comparators are white males in terms of the treatment that they were experiencing on the job. There's a very clear correlation. So that would legally be called someone who is some similarly situated or has a substantially similar position. And they typically, the kind of concept is that there's a common chain of command, right? And so as a person, an employee who is in a similar position as someone else, like a white male, for example, that's the comparator. And there's a common, usually some sort of common chain of command. And the difference is the Black woman is treated in a more poor way or a negative way or a less preferential way. Whereas their comparator, who's oftentimes a white man, but not necessarily always a white man, just a non-Black woman, is treated better or more preferentially. So these type of details are very important to pay attention to. And as I think it was Sergeant Rowlett said, having thick skin is extremely important, right? And also making sure that if you are going to report something, you're aware of the possibilities of retaliation. I get a lot of people who come to me during consultations and they're just like, I am I going to get retaliated against? And I'm like, possibly. I mean, the reality is, I can't give you any assurances that you won't, right? Because the unfortunate reality is, though, even though retaliation is illegal, so many people are retaliated against. In fact, sometimes retaliation claims legally are some of the easiest, and I say easiest with air quotes, some of the easiest claims to litigate and demonstrate legally. So that those are just a few things I'll offer. And it looks like I have a toddler who's about to join us.
Well, each sergeant here that's online tonight sort of expressed, I love it, expressed that the importance of documentation. I think each one mentioned about sending emails or providing a report. And I think that's really important. So can each one of you sort of talk about that process of collecting that documentation before going to do the litigation process? And with that said, what should people prepare to do if they're going to file a discrimination complaint?
So I'll start it off. It's very important. Documentation is very important, right? So I made it a habit to document these incidents as they occurred. I would timestamp an administrative report. Okay, that is very important because sometimes we forget things. Sometimes when things are happening, we may suppress feelings or situations that may occur and you may forget, right? But if you have that written documentation, you'll never forget. And I just remember just pulling out the big box that I had of documentation and I went down memory lane on everything. And I noticed that I kind of suppressed a lot of things that occurred. Okay, because you kind of don't want to think about it. You just kind of want to move on because it bothers you. So that's why it is important that you do document, because you will forget. And I'll let Danika pick up the next part.
Yeah, documentation is very important because the first thing they will say is, oh, well, did you document? Oh, where's the documentation? And basically, if you have no documentation, they say, oh, it didn't occur. It did occur. Okay, well, where's your proof? So the documentation is very, very, very important because that solidifies the date, the time, the incident that happened. You notate the witnesses that are around. You notate a lot of certain information that you need to have in that documentation to solidify your claim and what you are saying. Because when you file this through the chain of command, they might not get to you that day. They might come back to you 6 months from now or a year from now. And then during that time, you cannot remember, everything that everybody said or who was all there. So when you have that documentation, it helps you remember the things have happened, location, date, time, witnesses, and you're like, yeah, I do remember because here go my documentation. This is my proof and the date and time that it happened. So it's very important to have that documentation. Very important. And another thing, always make copies of your documentation. You have to make copies because in the police department, oh, all of a sudden it gets lost or they never received it. I had my fair share of when I was a rookie, officer, and I documented the incident and poof, be gone. Nobody never received it. It never got to the chain of command, and I had no copies of it. And I'm like, what? I wrote that. I know I did, and that was a lesson learned. So anything that you document, you better make copies, and not just one. You better make about 5 or 10 copies to keep here in your basement. I'm telling you, documentation, and always make copies. Make copies for yourself. Put on a flash drive. Keep the flash drive and your disk at home. Do not leave it at work. Do not leave none of that stuff at work. But documentation and making copies is very important.
And emails, very important. Like any type of email communication, you want to hold on to those type of things and to store them so you don't lose them. Because if you don't have documentation, it never happened. When it comes down to it, they'll say that never happened. We never had this conversation. So it's very important to cover yourself. And
I'm sorry. I was going to say the email thing, because in our department with the emails, they can go back into their emails and delete them. Mm-hmm. So if they send you an email and you don't send it to your private email or save that email, when you try to go back to look up that email, they have a way of getting rid of it, and you won't be able to find that email at all. So when they send you that email, you better screenshot it. You better send it to your personal email. You better do whatever you can to save that email, because it will be gone. Because I've been looking for this email and I know they got rid of it. But I was so glad that I had a copy of it. But that's how it is. And it's not no form of, after 90 days that it's gone. No, this can happen within a week. And once they realize, oh man, why did I say that to her? Or why did I send this? They go back, they go to IT and tell them withdraw all those emails, and it will be gone. It happened to me, so I know.
This is really important advice. I mean, straightforward, very important advice.
Terry,
I do want to.
Real quick, I wanted to just chime in about the email thing, because sometimes people get in trouble, right, when they are forwarding business records, which is what emails are, to their personal email addresses. So depending on where you work, what type of job you have, there may be other ways of memorializing those emails versus forwarding them. I'm happy to do a consultation with anyone who'd like to discuss them in greater detail. But a point for consideration is printing the emails.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. Hit that print button. I want to dive back into something that Sergeant Rowlett mentioned before, by the way, and that was the impact that this has on one's mental health. And the importance of taking care of oneself. I want to dive a little bit more into that conversation is, as you are going through these things, what does support look like, right? What does support look like as you are going through this litigation process? Because this is not a 1 week thing. I mean, this is something that could take some time. How do you support yourself mentally? How do you receive support? What does support look like for each one of you? And matter of fact, we can start with you, Sergeant Rowlett, if you want to, because I think you sort of opened this conversation.
Okay, yeah. So for me, support is I have to attend therapy once a week. If I miss a week, sometimes I might feel like, oh, you know what, I'm good this week. I don't need it. Something happens at work, triggers me, and now I'm feeling like crazy, So it's like, it's mandatory. I have to do it in order to function, in order to properly take care of my children, to properly take care of myself. I have to go. I just started going to a psychiatrist, because I'm not sleeping. I'm having nightmares of all of the things that they have been doing to me. So it is like I can't function without it. and I hate that I feel like that because, like I said earlier, I didn't walk in like this. I didn't
Mhm.
walk in bruised and battered and scarred like this. And I feel like when I leave, I'm going to have so many scars in this place. It is just ridiculous, and it hurts me, and like even now talking about it hurts me because it's like they don't see the mental, effect that it's having on all of us.
Mhm.
I talk to these girls. They are also my support system because, you know, I feel like people who haven't been in our shoes can't relate. You know, um, you try to talk to other friends and family members, but if they never been through this, where people are like tormenting you daily at work and they don't care. They don't care how they get you as long as they get you. They don't care about the consequences that may stem from it. They just worried about hurting you, making you miserable, causing you to go out on stress medical, like all of us ended up having to do at some point in time because of what they're doing. So it's like I have to call these girls and I have to cry, and tell them like, listen, this is what they're doing. Oh my gosh, why are they doing this to me? And I had to take my turn listening to them while they cried to me, So like having them there for me is definitely a wonderful support, like just having them to hear my cries and listen to me vent. And when I'm upset or when I'm angry, they're just like, listen, Jasmine, calm down. It's going to be okay. And even though it's not okay in the moment, I know that they're right. Right now it's not okay. I'm not okay right now. I'm
Right.
not okay, but I know that we're going to get through this and eventually I can try to get back to me.
Mm. Wow.
So for me, support, it's important that you do have a strong support system. Um, I grew closer to my family, even though I've always been close to my family, but I've grown closer to my family. They are in New York and I'm here in Baltimore, so they've been coming down to visit me a lot. And therapy. Mental health in this situation, it is very important that you attend to your mental health. As Jasmine said, all three of us that are on the call today, we've all gone out on stress medical, and it was not something that was planned. It was something that was needed. One day, I was like, I had a breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore, and
Mm.
I feared that something bad was going to happen. I really felt like something bad was going to happen. And I'm just so happy that I did go out on medical because I really went through a mental breakdown and it was like really bad. And then I had therapy sessions and I felt better. And I started to realize that I'm not wrong for speaking up about this. So it's you need a strong support system. That's number one. And the good thing about this is I was able to identify who my true friends were and who's standing by me. All right. Because
Mm.
when you go through this situation, people will shy away from you. People, don't want to get caught up in a crossfire, and that's fine. I understand that, but it allowed me to identify who these people are because I want them to keep the same energy when this is over and done
Mm.
with because the sun does come out after this. And I just want people to know that, yeah, you'll go through this dark tunnel, but the sun will come out and you'll be fine. So a strong support system and people around you that just want the best for you, but you have to speak to someone. Mental health is just very important because you will go through a break. I've dealt with the microaggressions. I've dealt with the subtle, comments, and it graduated to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. So don't ever let it get to that point. If you need to just take off or take a break, do it. I've done things like I've maintained my social life. That's very important for you to still socialize, go out, have fun, do the things that you like to do. Do not become a slave to the job and what's going on or the negativity, you do have to have a life outside of work. So that's what I would recommend.
Mm. Thank you.
Um, like Jasmine and Willa said, mental health is very important. So I count on these ladies all day. They like my shoulder to cry on. I mean, we all been through a retaliation, just like they say, each day is something different. So you have to have a strong support system. And I'm not going to say we're happy that we're going through this together. However, we are glad that we're able to be there for each other while going through this struggle, because nobody is happy for anybody to go through this. So, but going through this and having two other ladies there, it's like, it helps you get through it because you're not alone. However, we all gonna get through it together. It's really, really hard because you would expect that maybe you'll have maybe one or two support, like a support group or a vanguard or something internally inside of the police department, but there's no support inside of the police department. And it's sad
Mm.
that um, we have to be able to get support from outside, such as NABLEO, the NAACP, the National Black Police Association, our attorneys and other people. It's like, we have to look for people outside of the police department to have that support for us in order for us to be able to have a shoulder to lean on because we have no support inside, and also therapy. You definitely have to make sure that you attend therapy to keep your mind right and to be sane. Because if not, they will try to drive you crazy and try to break you down. And that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to lose yourself, because a lot of things
Yeah.
happen, especially police suicide, things happen and that's not how you want to be. So you got to have that good support system. You really do.
Mm.
Terry, I also wanted just to chime in on this because I don't think people realize that employment, there's kind of this thing that lawyers say as it relates to different practice industries. And, next to family law, employment law can be some of the most traumatic and dramatic types of legal practice for lawyers. And that is because, and people may not really think it, but that is because they're so, first of all, in your employment space, your workplace, you spend so much time there. You're oftentimes, at least pre-COVID, and for employees like police officers, even during COVID, you're in these close quarters with these people that you work with. There's so many interdynamics, interpersonal dynamics. And you're spending a lot of time. Sometimes people spend more time at work than they do with their own family, their own immediate family. And so because of this, when something negative happens or something traumatic happens at your workplace, it can literally become all consuming. And it's all you can think about, right? And sometimes, you almost become hyper vigilant and hypersensitive to your workplace, to the work environment, to the workplace dynamics, to the point that you don't know, like, if someone who would normally say hello to you decides one day that they are not going to say hello to you, if you have previously reported some sort of workplace issue or incident or engaged in EEO protected activity, you're now wondering, oh, well, does that person know that I just made this report or this filing? So every little thing and every little detail starts to impact you. And that is how mental health becomes such a big deal in employment cases. And people don't really understand. I have a lot of clients who deal with anxiety, depressive anxiety disorder. Some have developed bipolar disorder. I mean, there's so many mental health and mental health adjacent issues that people develop, right? Things that they didn't have to deal with previously that they're now starting to deal with. And so what I would say, and what I often say to my clients is make sure you document this with your medical provider as well, because The reality is when we start litigating as lawyers damages, we want to talk about your pain and suffering. We want to talk about your emotional distress. We want to talk about your pain medicine management. We want to talk about, any therapy co-pays, any therapy counseling sessions out of pocket that you had to pay that insurance does not cover. We want to itemize your damages. We want to talk about the extent and the severity of them, any hospitalizations, inpatient, outpatient treatments, anything of that nature becomes very important. And when a judge or a trier of fact is looking at damages and making an assessment, there needs to be a correlation with the workplace conduct and the resulting manifestation, whether it was an emotional or physical manifestation of what happened to that employee. And so because of that, you want to be specific with your physician, your medical provider, your therapist. So it's written in some note somewhere that this is a result of your workplace stress, workplace discrimination, workplace retaliation. You want to make sure that is documented, because at the end of the day, if I need to call in an expert witness or provide some expert witness reports to be able to substantiate my argument for why I'm requesting a certain amount of damages for any past and future projected harm and emotional distress, we want to make sure that is recorded and documented to corroborate the reason that we are advocating for a certain amount of money.
That's some really good advice, and I think anyone who is considering that pathway for seeking legal either litigation or what have you not, understanding the importance of documenting all of that. There's a question in the chat box. There's a question in the chat box that I want to bring up. What would you like to see from your black male counterparts? Can you put back up there? Supporting black female officers who are being targeted. And I think this came up a couple of times actually in regards to that retaliation not having a color or a race. But one of the things that we talked about on this show is when a black female is going through these type of behaviors being directed towards them, retaliation, sexual harassment, whatever it may be, what would you like to see happen? What would you like to see from your black male counterparts on the force?
Well,
okay, go ahead.
That's a great question.
So I would like to see them stand up for themselves. Okay. Prior to us coming forward with these lawsuits, there was like a ton of black males within my police department that were demoted for no reason, retaliated against. Some who blew the whistle on certain things, they were retaliated against, and they did nothing for themselves. And it just seems like they were beaten to submission. Okay, they seem very afraid. So first off, they have to stand up for themselves, okay, before they can stand up for anyone else. So that's what I would like to see. 9 times out of 10, when these incidents are occurring with us females, there are black men around, all right? In all of our situations, there are black men around, and they don't protect us. They don't speak up. And it starts off with themselves. They're not even speaking up for themselves. So that's what I would like to see. Number one, stand up for yourself.
I would like for them to be a resolution to the problem, not be the problem, because they are part of the problem. If you see it happening and you're not doing anything about it, then you are the problem. And like I said, yes, you do have to stand up for yourself first before you can stand up for anybody. And you see them standing around, you see them whispering, they gossiping, they're part of the problem, and we have to stop that culture where as though they feel as though that they cannot, stand up for us because they don't want to be attached to us because of the situation that we're going through. So we would like for them to be able to take a stand. You got to be able to take a stand, for what is right. And if you can't stand up for yourself, how can you stand up for us? But they like I said, they're beaten to submission that they don't even want to try to help themselves in order to help anybody else. So we got to get them out of that mindset and that mind frame that, oh, if I stand up for this person, then I won't get this promotion, or I won't get this job because I'm taking up for her, knowing that they're right, or the incident or the actions that occurred were wrong. So we do need a bigger support system, especially from the Black men, to be able to stand up for us. They have to be able to stand up for us, but they have to be able to stand up for themselves and be true to themselves and know that this is wrong. I'm going to stand up whether, people like it or people don't like it. They have to be able to stand up, and the support will be much better, and we'll have a bigger support system internally instead of us looking for support externally. It's sad that we got to get support outside because none of the Black men inside are willing to stand up for us.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these black men, they hold positions of power, but they straddle the fence, So by them straddling the fence, we're not getting the proper help that we could get if they were to speak up for us in our defense. Um, they'll come to us behind our back, behind closed doors and say, "Oh yeah, I'm glad y'all doing that," "Oh, good job." But they are the ones that we could have went to, that could have came to us and said, "Let me help you. That's wrong what they're doing to you. Let me help you. Let me give you some type of advice of what you can do." They don't give you advice. They sit back in these cubicles and these offices, and they talk about you and gossip about you and your situation. They laugh at you with these people, and then they come behind closed doors and congratulate you and, "Oh, I'm proud of you." So it's like I don't respect it. How they straddle that fence like that, because I was just lunchroom talk. I was just the topic of your conversation when you were eating your lunch with your coworkers, and you were saying, "Oh, I don't think it was smart how they did this." Instead of coming to me and telling me, "Look, you should have, let me help you out. Let me give you some type of guidance," because they know better. Um, I think we've all had situations when we were beginners in our careers, rookies, where black men had lieutenant positions and major positions, and they could have came and helped us out, said something, but they just don't. They're silent. They let us go through this. They let us suffer in silence, and they watch it, and they just don't use their platform to help us.
Nope, they need to be the solution to the problem, not be the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Terry, I would actually like to add a couple things to this point, because I'm actually representing two Black officers in federal court right now. One of whom is a former Black sergeant with the Baltimore Police Department for approximately 25 years. And part of the reason we are in federal court is because he did stand up for the Black women in the Eastern District that he saw being treated less preferentially than the white women. And when he started raising this as an issue, and really just calling it out based on a racial disparate treatment theory, he became targeted. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about law enforcement having the good old boy club, right? And that's why there's this duplicity and this duality that these sergeants are speaking about, because the minute while you know it's probably wrong, or you observe that it's probably wrong, and you kind of have this inner turmoil where it's like, well, do I put a target on my back? There's a self-preservation argument in assessment that happens, right? And that's why sometimes people just kind of sit back and become bystanders to tragedy. And it's very, very unfortunate, because the reality is, when Black men stand up, when they start speaking out, they too become targeted. And that's because you are now going against the badge, right? You are now going against that blue wall, and you become ostracized, just like the victims, typically Black women victims, who are subject to sexual harassment and differential treatment just based on their gender. And so, it's someone who actually litigates these cases and does, numerous consultations with Baltimore Police Department current and former employees. I hear these various stories, and they're plentiful. There are many of them. I've talked and spoken to many Black officers at various levels in their trajectory with BPD. And sometimes they say they want to move forward, and then I don't hear anything else, right? And
Mhm.
so the reality is, to the point that I think is very resounding, is you have to first be willing to be courageous for yourself
Mm-hmm.
before you can be courageous for others.
That's
And the reality is, if you're not willing to be courageous for yourself, everybody else is doomed.
Mhm.
that's great information. Now we also want to see questions pour in the chat, and I'm also be mindful of time as well. There are two questions that the first one is currently on the screen, and that's how can the community rally? And I'm thinking more the civilian side, right? Because there's the law enforcement and the civilian side. How can the community rally to get internal representation and support? I think each one of the sergeants mentioned that they had to seek support outside of the department, which really shouldn't be the case. There should be some type of internal support. So, in your opinion, how do we rally to make that happen?
We
You
have
need
some here
transparency.
for town hall meetings.
Mhm.
I think that would be beneficial to kind of spread the word and,
Mhm.
let people know what's going on inside,
Mhm.
because they're also fighting a battle outside, with these officers violating the Black community. So they will definitely understand or get a glimpse of what we have to encounter inside with them. So town hall meetings would be a good idea.
Hmm.
Absolutely. The town hall meeting will actually show transparency. So, internally, they only tell them just a little bit, what they want them to hear, just to basically shut them up. But when you have people who actually work there, sergeants who are actually going through it, we can show them transparency and we can tell them firsthand what is going on and what can be done and how we need their help in order to make things right and to show them that what they're telling you is not all right, it's not true. Like they just do that because they just want you to close your mouth, answer the question, give you a little bit of information and keep it moving. But transparency is definitely the key in order to get it done. And town hall with the transparency so we can show them, what can be done to help, especially like we need the support.
We
If
do.
they don't know, they wouldn't be able to help us. So that's the way of us getting out the word and spreading the information to them to let them know that we are trying to fight in-house too, as well as them outside not really knowing everything, but
Right,
that this is why we're here.
right.
Hmm.
Uh,
I want to add though that I think it's very important for the external community to really contact publicly elected officials about these issues that they're hearing about, that they're seeing about. You have to put pressure on elected officials, because only at that point will they really start paying attention. When they're starting to hear from their constituents, from people who could potentially vote them in or out of office, at that point, that's when that radar and the eyeballs open wide, and it becomes a little bit more real to people. Otherwise, it's just a newspaper article here or a YouTube video there, or a press clip or news report here or there, and then it just disappears. But you literally have to meet people at the ballot box. And if you do not think that these elected officials are managing and providing sufficient oversight over their agencies that they have responsibility for, not only how they treat people externally, but also how they treat people internally, only then will you start getting attention paid to the issues. How can police officers effectively police externally if they can't even really get along internally with their fellow colleagues? There's war on both sides. So the reality is there has to be damage control on all areas. Actually, the Baltimore Police Department is under a consent decree just right now, as a result of 2016 Department of Justice consent decree based on an investigation that they had where they determined that the Baltimore Police Department generally was violating civilians' 14th Amendment rights. But what
mm,
about the rights of the employees internally? What about the officers who have sworn to protect civilians, who aren't the ones actually violating civilians' rights externally, yet they have no reprieve internally when their own rights are getting violated? So, if
Yep.
we really want systematic fixes, you have to put pressure on the system so it will fix.
We have one more question from the chat box, and I want to bring it up as well. Thank you. Are there any Black women within your department who are also supporting you?
Well, I'll take the lead on this one. So,
Thank you.
so really quickly, and real quick, in 2021, in June of 2021, I was summoned to a meeting with the second person in charge of the police department, and it's the Black female. She had just recently got promoted to deputy commissioner of operations. She pulled me in a meeting, and during this meeting, she told me that I was not being promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Of course, I asked why, and I explained to her in the meeting that, they did not have a valid reason to skip me for promotion and that this was retaliatory. She told me that she was just a messenger. That speaks volumes to me because she's not just the messenger. She's second in charge of the police department. Okay. And if I already, laid out that they didn't have a valid reason to skip me, and I told you what this is about, at this point, you have the authority, you have the power, one or the other, but either you have the authority or you don't have the power. She had the authority at that time to say, well, you know what, I'll look into this. This doesn't sound right. But she told me that she was just the messenger.
Mm.
So I don't know what more I can say to you to really describe what's going on here, but this is what we're encountering. All right. So we do have people that will support us in silence, but they're scared. It's just like they're scared.
Wow.
Yeah. So publicly, no, we don't have any Black women in the police department that are supporting us. They may be supporting us silently. They may be supporting us to their friends and family saying, oh, I know them and I support them. But no, we don't have anybody internally, Black women, that we can have a shoulder to cry or lean on because they are part of the problem too. Um, it's very sad because you have these Black women who are in these positions that can make a change and do something and speak up because they have the voice of reasoning. However, they don't say anything. They actually go along with the program, go along with the retaliation, go along with the demotion, not promoting, having these closed door meetings, having you there, and whatever the top issue or whatever they say to do, they do it, and that's the sad part, knowing that it's wrong. So Black women in the police department do not stand up for each other. They do not speak out. They always want to have these women symposiums and say, oh, we're there for you. We're going to do this. And not near one of them be there by your side when you are going through the fire. They actually turn their backs on you. They literally do. If you're not going through it, you don't have a support system with the ladies like the three that we have right here, they're not helping you. They'll look at you and turn the other way. And then after everything is said and done, then they'll come to you when the smoke clears and say, oh, I was supporting you 100%. No, you wasn't. No, you wasn't. Because you wouldn't dare talk to me. You wouldn't say anything to me, or you wouldn't stand up for when you know that the fact that what they were doing was wrong. And that's the sad part, that we are in this alone. And no, we don't have any Black women supporting us at all. None.
I
Mm.
agree. I think it's like the. I'm sorry, Danica. Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now, I was just going to piggyback off what you said. I think it's the go along to get along type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. They sit back and they're not supportive. They, like I said, they talk about you. And I think that these white men in positions of power, they send them to do their dirty work. But it's disguised as, oh, it's not racism because it's a black woman telling a black woman, giving this a punishment or charging you, but it's the order given down to that black woman to us, so it's
Yes.
like they're used to deliver the punishments or to deliver the charges and stuff like that. And they don't realize they're being played,
Yeah.
and then it's not until it's them that they come out of the closet and say, oh, hey, what did you do? Hey,
Yeah.
well, when this happened to you, how did you handle it? So it's all in secrecy until it's them, until they're in the they're in the fire.
Yeah.
When they're in the fire, oh, that's when they're coming out. Like, I had your back. I was rooting for you. But publicly, when they are good and clear and whatever, you don't get that support. I did have this one woman come up to me, and it touched me. But this is one out of thousands, But she came to me and she said, I saw you on the news, and I just want to say thank you, and that meant a lot to me because it felt like, to me, she either been through something with the department or she knew someone who was, and finally somebody is fighting them back, So it meant a lot to me. But like I said, that's just one out of a lot of other women, who have said nothing, who have helped us or haven't helped us at all or anything. So I don't know. It's heartbreaking, because you would want to see us come together and offer that support to one another, but she just
I did
doesn't
I
have
did
it.
want to make this clear that the black women don't come out until they start messing with them. So when they start messing with them, then they come to you and then they tell their little secrets. Oh, well, Lieutenant so and so or Major so and so had me come after you. That really wasn't me. That was so and
Exactly.
so
That's what
that
I was
had me
saying.
come after you for this. But they don't stop or they don't say that that's wrong when that major, that commander, or that lieutenant tell them to do their dirty work for them. They go out and do it. But then when they're not the icing on the cake at that moment, and then they start turning their backs on them, now they want to come to you and say, oh, well, so and so, it really wasn't me. It was Lieutenant or Major or Captain so and so that put me up to do it, and they had me do this. But yeah, you still part of the problem because not once did you say that you wasn't going to do it, and you knew that it was wrong, and you didn't go against them to say, no, I'm not doing that. You did it. But now, since you're not their pawn or you're not usable anymore because they say that, you just done. Now they're coming after you. Now you want to come back to me, to befriend me and say, oh, this is the reason why I had to do this. No, we're not friends. And that's not how it's going to work because you was part of the problem during the time of when it was happening to me. But now when it's happening to you, now you need some advice and you need some help. That's how the black women get down because they are used as a by proxy inside of the police department from these white men to come
Mhm.
after us. And then when they're all used up and abused up, now they want to come after you and they want to say and they want to cry their story, their sob story of how they was being used and it really wasn't them. But can you help me with X, Y, and Z? And it's no.
Wow, that's that's heartbreaking, and by all means, because we would always hope that there would be a level of support from your other sisters in blue. And I'm not when I say support, I mean support that is out in public, not the behind the back support. I'm talking about when you're going through it at the time, being able to say, no, this is not what you're not going to do this. Um, wow. Okay, I'm going to be mindful of time and all Sergeant Jasmine and Welai and Danika, I really appreciate you sharing your stories and definitely Miss Lewis as well. Now, I ask this question to everyone who comes on this show because I want them to be able to leave a message. But one thing that is on my mind too is, and this goes back to what Miss Lewis was saying, this is not, even though you're four sergeants from the Baltimore Police Department, this is not a one department issue. This is something that is being seen across the country. So my question is with purpose here is what is your message to America? And I'm let anyone take it from there.
I would first like to say treat women equitably, treat Black people equitably. We are all humans. We are all a part of the human race. And, at the end of the day, the only thing that really sometimes divides us is the way we look. And that is so superficial. We all have hearts, we all have brains, we all have minds. And if you really just lead your life with a little bit of compassion, a little bit of grace, and a little bit of mercy, that will go a long way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, to answer the question, I would definitely put out there that racial and gender discrimination, it exists, whether in the police department or outside. Racism is alive and well, and this is what's going on. And yeah, the battle of equality, it continues. That's what I would like to put out there.
I guess I would say, it has been an uphill battle for all of us. But at the end of the day, we aren't looking for anything outside of, just being treated fairly, just being able to come to work and feel safe, come to work and feel welcome, come to work and feel, I guess, like we fit in. We don't fit in right now, and we just want to fit in. That's it. We want to go to work and not have to feel bruised and battered at the end of our shift. And I think that I'm speaking for most Black women in police departments all across America when I say that.
Thank you.
We would like to be treated equally. We would like to be treated equally as Black women. We would like to have a seat at the table and be able to speak and not be seen. Not be seen and not heard. We would like to be able to speak and be equal to the men. It's sad that we are still fighting for equal rights, just as the men, like equal pay, equal positions. We are still fighting this uphill battle. And it's sad that us as Black women are really fighting it even harder because we have to prove ourselves 10 times more than any other race. And it's sad. So I would like for us to be able to be equal, to have a seat at the table and to be able to speak and be able to give our ideas, to be able to give our experiences and be able to be there and be comfortable there and not uncomfortable because they allowed us to be there, but they really don't want us to be there. No, we worked very, very hard for these positions and we earned these positions. Nothing was given to us. So we should be able to stand up for ourselves and have equal rights just like everybody else.
Yeah.
First of all, again, thank you, Sergeant Yampierre, Sergeant Rowlett, Sergeant Grant, and Ms. Lewis for your time. Now, I'll tell you right now, we still got people hanging on, asking questions. So if you want to stick around as what we typically call the after party, feel free to do so. I do want to make sure that I am mindful of your time because you already spent an hour and a half with us. And I know that it is the evening, but I think your story is really important to share. And I also see what's happening in the chat box, and I say the chat box, not just talking about this chat box, but also my phone, which I keep next to me. People are texting me, we have to do a town hall. We have to do a town hall. So I think that's something that we can definitely discuss in the future as well, because I think the what was very said today is that in order to push that envelope, we're going to have to go after those who are elected as well. Mm-hmm. So with that said, I'm going to stay on this call, but I want to also give the option for those who have to leave to leave. but we can definitely do the after party if you have maybe 10 to 15 minutes just to answer questions that are popping in the chat box. So let's get ahead. I'm going to get ahead and end this section of it, and we'll be back in a few minutes. So please stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Tell us what you really mean, ma'am. Law enforcement officers should be role models, period. If you can't be a mentor, you shouldn't have that uniform.
I could take a break from this world.
All my blinders are taken off. I can see what you guys are talking about. Y'all don't see what we're talking about yet. Policing is the law enforcement arm of systemic racism.
Well, the message for America is that they need to wake up. We need to stop the repeat. We need to stop the revolving door. And we need to come up with better ways of law enforcement. Criminal justice reform needs to reflect what it is. Ain't no way in the world somebody should be sitting in jail with a $1 bail for months.
Welcome back to the after party. So I'm just going to focus on just the questions that coming in from the chat box, and if anyone wants to address those, feel free to do so. I know you guys can see the chat box as well, and the people who are saying thank you for your story. I know that some of the people who are watching have similar stories from different parts of the country, and they are saying that this was very helpful to them as well. So my friend backstage, if there's any questions that has popped up that I did not see, can you draw it up on the front?
So while they're doing that, I would just like to say, Terry, thank you so much for this opportunity. But I also want to give a major shout out to Sonia Zalakoffer. She definitely put us on the map, and she definitely pointed me in the right direction to Sean Kennedy, Nablio.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Sonia.
Thank you.
Love you much, big sis.
Yes.
Thank
Sonia,
you.
I saw chats on the Sonia throughout the whole time here. So yes, Sonia Zalakoffer, you are one that I've been following for a while too myself, as you know. And so, sis, we love having you on board. Yes. So here's a question that came in from Eleanor, who is actually one of our board advisors. She asks, "Are you ladies still working, or are you out on leave?"
Well, I'm currently working. I was out on leave for 60 days. It was the best 60 days of my life because I think I would have lost my mind had I not taken the days. So I'm back to work, and everything seems okay. But you see some things, you'll see certain things, which, I'm back. I'll just keep it at that. I'm back.
I'm back at work. I was out on leave for about 8 months. I just came back in September. I was out since January. So I was out on stress medical from January all the way to the second week in September. So I just been back about a few months now.
Wow.
And for me, I'm back and forth. 1 week I feel okay, and I can come in and I'm strong, and then something will happen and it'll just put me back in my dark place again. So right now I've been off since like the end of November. And yeah, stress medical.
Yeah. Oh, and another thing I did wanted to point out is that us ladies, when we're out on stress medical, even though it is work related, they are not deeming as work related. So the time that we are out, we're actually out without pay. So the time that I've been out, they took all of my time away from me, and I was out without pay. So in order for me to get my mind right and to basically be sane for my husband and my children and for myself as well, I said, you know what, I'm not even worrying about getting paid. I'm worrying about my mental health and me being able to be strong to take care of my family. So I was out majority of that time without pay. Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out, that they did not deem it as line of duty, which it is line of duty. The workers' comp deemed it as line of duty, but what they stated to me, the job stated to me that yeah, it was line of duty, but you could have still came to work. How can you tell me that I can still come to work when my doctors put me out, the job doctor put me out, my therapist put me out, and y'all still said that even though that they put me out, I could have still came to work, and they took me out without pay. So I was not getting paid all those months. So I literally, the only reason why I came back in September was because they forced me to come back because they said they was going to charge me with AWOL, and then they was going to charge me with job abandonment all the days since July. So I said, you know what, let me come back because, you know, since I'm pregnant, I needed to come back, you know, due to health insurance and things of that nature. So, you know, I was forced to come back. I was not ready to come back at all. My therapist, my psychiatrist did not recommend me to come back, but I had to make a sound decision in order to support my family. And that was the reason why I came back. But yeah, I was out on no pay status because they didn't deem it as line of duty because of the stress that I was going through.
You know, and you're not the only person who has told me something similar as far as that type of treatment being AWOL when you have medical documentation saying otherwise. And every time I hear those stories, I always think, is that got to be, and again, maybe Ms. Lewis, you could chime in on this one, but is that teetering on the line of an ADA discrimination complaint when you have a medical documentation saying that you are experiencing X, Y, and Z and should not be at work, but then being forced to return back to work in the threats of being either fired or having further disciplinary actions towards you?
So I'll say the one thing a lot of lawyers like to say, and the first thing I'll say is it depends, right? You know, from your scenario, what I'm possibly hearing is more of a Family Medical Leave Act violation, interference, or retaliation versus an ADA or Rehabilitation Act claim. The thing some people don't quite understand is if your doctor is writing you out from work, that doesn't necessarily mean it's an ADA issue, right? Because the whole point of an ADA claim or complaint, or really just the interactive process under federal law, is that you can obtain or should be able to obtain a reasonable accommodation that allows you or permits you in the assistance of the performance of the essential functions of your position. Correct. So if your doctor is writing you out of work, then arguably, and that's why I say it depends, arguably, it's possibly a Family Medical Leave Act retaliation or interference claim, depending on the actual facts and details. But if it's a situation where your doctor is saying, you know, you can be on light duty, right? And you do have a position description where there are some positions or some functions of your position that you can perform, or perhaps there's some sort of reassignment or some sort of, some sort of, whether it's a reassignment or a change of duties or alteration of temporary duties, where you can theoretically still be in your role, right? But perhaps be transferred to something else, or perhaps, do a part of your responsibilities that may not be as predominant as others that are the reason or the basis for why you need to be out in a light duty capacity. So, for example, if walking is a heavy part of your job description, but so is, writing administrative reports or data entry, for example. Let's say your doctor is saying you can't walk for extended durations of time. Perhaps you walk for certain isolated segments of time, or maybe the employer is willing to allow you to focus more on your administrative duties, or your data entry duties, and allows whatever the walking component of that job to be delegated to someone else. The reality is, under the American with Disabilities Act, the employer has an obligation to engage in the interactive process with the employee, right? It's supposed to be this collaborative effort to see if, in fact, an employee can actually perform the essential functions of their position, right? It's not supposed to just be, oh, you can't do your job, so we can't help you, right? The legal theory is if it is an undue burden or poses an undue burden or undue hardship, depending on the case law and what jurisdiction you're in, on the employer, then they could potentially have a justification for not providing reasonable accommodation. But they're potentially liable for an ADA claim if they fail and neglect to engage in that at all.
You know, I love, and it's funny because I laugh because I'm not a lawyer. I always joke, I'm not a lawyer. I play one on TV, right? So the realm of my discipline is in ADA. And I love the definition that you gave and the explanation, because that's the part that I was getting at, is that interactive process. And it seems like with your clients, especially the sergeants that's online today, they have continuously tried to engage in the current process, but either was ignored or that process was used to retaliate against them. And I think that's the point I was getting at is, you know, a couple of times it was mentioned here, either saying, I sent an email to say, you know, this is what's happening or this is what's going on, and either just not getting a response back or being ignored. But that's a really good point, Ms. Lewis. I'm glad you were able here to clarify that up. Any other questions? Because we are in the after party. Hold on. So there was another question that was posted. Which question was that? Oh, no other questions. Okay. Well, I think I took up enough of your time. I'm going to end the show, and I'm getting you guys to stay online for a quick goodbye. But for everyone else who's watching live, everyone have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.